Hi, everybody. So like Rick said, we'll get started here. I'm Ross Kaler. I'm a project engineer in the transportation department with the city of Fitchburg and kind of managing this project. Then we have Rick Eilertson, who's our design engineer for this project. You can kind of go over some background.
Rick Eilertson, I've got about maybe 25, 30 years of experience, both in the public sector and the private sector, with kind of general municipal engineering background, and probably the last 20 years has been really focused on stormwater design and management. And I had the opportunity to work for the city of Fitchburg as their environmental engineer from 2006 to 2017, so got a lot of background knowledge about Fitchrona Road in particular that I'll be able to share during the presentation. And then with me is the team that I have with AECOM. So now I left the city of Fitchburg I guess it's almost 7 years ago now, and have been working back at AECOM. And we were able to help the city and town with designing the road. And then I'll go with Derek next to talk about the teamwork that he's been doing on traffic control.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Derek Solmonson. I'm a traffic engineer at AECOM. I have been for the last 10 years or so now. And I did work on the Nesbitt Roundabout project quite a bit, but otherwise this is some of the only work I have done in the city, but I look forward to it.
Hello, my name is Kyle Neve, and I've been with AECOM for about 8 years now, and I am leading the stormwater management and storm sewer with aid of Rick here, and I also helped out with the Nesbitt Fitchrona roundabout a few years back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Check, with AECOM now 11 years, and I'm leading the roadway design for the Fitchrona Road project. And I was also involved on the Nesbitt roundabout as well, so a little bit of knowledge of the area as well, and looking forward to working on this project.
Thanks. I'm Ben Schulte, the environmental engineer for the city of Fitchburg, and I just want to say thanks to everyone that's come out. I know it's a beautiful day. I wasn't sure, maybe with the sunshine and warm weather, people would be out and about or elsewhere. So it is very much appreciated. This is a great opportunity to get people's feedback. You guys are the ones that live there and have lived there, so your feedback and things that you can share is really very important. So, with that, I'll pass it off to Chris.
Hi, thanks for everyone for showing up tonight. My name is Chris Barnes. I'm the Public Works Director for the town of Verona. Like a big title for a little operation, but anyway, I'm happy to see you're here tonight, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have about any other town operations after the presentation.
I'm Tim Volker. I'm the Director of Public Works, City Engineer for the City of Fitchburg. Just like to say thank you for everyone coming out. Just would like to echo Ben's comments on, now's the time to provide your feedback to us. We're still early in the process for the design, going to be working on it through the rest of this calendar year into next, so it's easier now to incorporate your comments than come construction time. So, any feedback we can get from you guys would be much appreciated now so that we can incorporate it and see this project successful.
All right, thanks everybody for the introductions. I'll just kind of start. I know the Lacey Road reconstruction project impacts almost all of you as well. So just kind of a brief update on that. As you know, road work started about 2 weeks ago, all the way down on the other end of the project at the Seminole Highway intersection. So they'll be working kind of down from that end towards Fitchrona Road will kind of be their general path. And then June 10th, which is not that far away now, about 2 weeks, will be when the intersection with Seminole Highway will close and they'll get started on the roundabout that will be going in there. And that roundabout will be is supposed to be finished before school gets started again in the fall. and then they'll kind of continue on working on the main stretch of Lacey Road. So if there's any questions about that, can also answer those after the presentation. And then another thing to add, this Fitchrona Road project will also impact the 400 feet of Lacey Road that's nearest to Fitchrona. So the Lacey Road project will kind of stop 400 feet from Fitchrona, and then we'll pick that back up again with this project. So yeah, so then I'll pass it on to Ben Schulte for an update on the Goose Lake and Fitchrona Road drainage improvements, and Chris Barnes will have some input there too.
Thanks, Ross. So I'm not sure if any of you folks were out at any of the Goose Lake meetings. There's been a few public information meetings over the past couple of years just regarding the flooding issues out there. I'm sure you're all well aware of Fitchrona Road being closed due to flood water, at least practically every other year, it seems. So in 2021, the city and town worked with a consultant to look at, why is it flooding? What can be done? What are some viable solutions, alternatives? And basically came up with a few things. So first off, you could increase the capacity in the storm sewer in the road, in Fitchrona Road, to allow water to move more efficiently from east to west. That's one piece of it. But the study actually found that Goose Lake, immediately to the west of Fitchrona Road, is basically the surface water there is at an elevation where water in Fitchrona can't really efficiently get across because it's getting backed up from that Goose Lake water. So Goose Lake doesn't have a natural outlet. It doesn't flow into a river. Basically, the water needs to get to a certain elevation. It can exit through a couple culverts. Then it gets into the Dane County wetlands immediately west of Goose Lake. And again, the water has to raise up to a certain point before it can overtop the land and eventually get into Badger Mill Creek. So that study basically determined that that water in Goose Lake and to the west is creating what is called the tailwater effect, basically not allowing water from Fitchrona Road to continue on west. So as a result of that study, the city and town have been kind of working jointly together to look at some potential opportunities to basically increase or allow water to flow out of Goose Lake. So maybe that's increasing the size of the culverts. That was one of the recommendations that came out of the study. And then the other thing is maybe just making some channel cuts in the wetland so the water doesn't have to get up this high before it can overtop. Cutting out a couple of feet lets the water move on. And the modeling that was completed shows that would have a pretty marked effect on flooding in Fitchrona Road, both allowing that the road to remain unflooded, I guess, if you will, in larger storm events, and then when it would flood, the flood waters would recede much faster. So that feasibility study was completed, not too long ago. We're kind of in the stage right now to look at, advancing the feasibility study to actual final design and permitting, which would involve some more modeling and, working with the regulatory agencies, making sure that there's, no side effects, unwanted side effects to a solution that weren't originally anticipated. And one other thing I'll mention, some of you may have heard that MMSD was going to discontinue discharge of their effluent into Badger Mill Creek. Today, that decision was essentially finalized, or the board members voted to discontinue that effluent. And there was some conversation that MMSD would make some funds available to look at maybe supplementing that lost effluent. So that could very well play into or influence the solution that we come up with to try to reduce the flooding at Fitchrona Road. And I'll pass this off to Chris. He may have some more things to share.
Hey, I'll keep it kind of brief, but I will say that I have in my office a plat map from 1874, and to summarize the Goose Lake project is to restore the drainage that was there before the railroad was built, before 151 was built, before anything was built, to restore the natural drainage course that has been changed over the years. And secondly, I did want to mention that, as Ben said, the Madison Metropolitan Sanitary District has a project that you may be aware of along Goose Lake, and they're intending on bidding that project in July. It won't impact any of the residents that would have sewer out there, but it's worthwhile to know that it's going to occur, and it's going to increase the size of their pipe system that basically goes from the force main, the pump station on Fitchrona Road that's down near the trail across from the quarry park. And it will install a new pipeline all the way to Verona, into the city. As I said, it goes through some of that wetlands, and it has somewhat of an impact on our Goose Lake drainage, but that will probably be occurring this fall.
And it'll also temporarily impact the trails that are on the Dane County property through there, right, Chris?
There will be some impacts, which I could discuss later. It's not really
Right.
part of this project, but I'm happy to discuss that afterwards.
Yeah. Great. And then maybe before we jump into the Fitchrona Road reconstruction project, Ben, do you want to just mention that there's a Notify Me listserv for the Fitchrona Road flooding?
Yeah. If you are interested in that, I think there's a sign-in sheet. We can get you added so you can get email updates, periodically, just what's going on, next steps, things we're looking at, things of that nature. I believe there's a Notify Me for the street reconstruction project as well, you may be aware of.
Yep, so Ross just set that up. You want to just describe that?
Yep, yeah, there's a similar email list for the Fitchrona Road project and for the Lacey Road project, and they're two separate email lists for those. And then there's also a web page on the City of Fitchburg website for both of those projects. So the most recent plans, minutes from the most recent meetings regarding this project, will be posted on the City of Fitchburg website for each project respectively. So,
and then if you haven't already signed in, there's sign-in sheets that Ross had created on the table over there. There's also the agenda that we'll cover. And I think Ross is going to post the PowerPoint presentation. It may be on there already on the web page that Ross set up for the Fitchrona Road reconstruction project.
yep, those will be posted probably tomorrow. So.
And then the roll plots are much larger, so those may be harder to post, but I've got them included in the PowerPoint presentation that'll be posted. So, and if we can figure out a way to make the roll plots available electronically, at that higher resolution, we'll try to work on that as well. So let's see if I can. I'll just, so we've kind of gone into the agenda, already handled 1, 2, and 3, and then I'll talk about the Fitchrona Road reconstruction, basically giving a project overview, the project schedule, some of the project challenges, which a lot of you are already aware of, and then we'll talk about the comment period being until June 9th for the initial comment, just to help Ross and our team make sure that we understand any concerns that residents in the area have. And then 4.5 is just the next steps. We'll allow for a little bit of time while we're still in all together for any general questions that people might have. If you have something that's really burning that you want to, especially if you see a slide that's of interest to you, feel free to just raise your hand, and I'll try to do that. Otherwise, we'll hold any general questions at the end, and then once we go through any general questions, any specific questions, we'll go back into the open house format, just like we started with, and we can kind of look at any particular areas that you might be interested in related to the roll plots. So a couple of things. We've got a few different typical sections. So this is basically a cross-section of the proposed road design that the city has asked us to look at putting together. Some of this work was already done by previous staff here at the city of Fitchburg, so we've been able to build on that for what I would call, this is maybe 25% plans, so very, in my opinion, very preliminary. There's certain things that we just we're going to have to be close to what we have right now, but there may be flexibility in certain portions of the project to help accommodate questions, any suggestions that you may have. But basically, the thought process is for this area from Tonto Trail about up to Lacey Road. It's not going to look exactly like this. But we're looking at going from an existing rural section, an existing narrow rural section, to a proposed wider rural section with gravel shoulders, but also enough space to allow the two 11-foot travel lanes, and then two on each side, two bike buffers, so a 2-foot bike buffer from the edge of the travel lane. Right here, for example, I'll see if I can make this cursor work, but this is that bike buffer, so a 2-foot wide bike buffer, and then a 4-foot wide bike lane before the 2-foot gravel shoulder off the edge. On the west side, the town of Verona side, we'll just be trying to match, a similar ditch section as what's there right now, maybe a little bit deeper in some areas. One area on the north side, from the crown of the hill within the project limits going north, we're kind of matching what the City of Fitchburg staff had suggested initially with having a curb and gutter on that west side, the town of Verona side, just to help, because there's not much of an existing swale there right now, and obviously it's very steep, so we're looking at the possibility of putting a curb and gutter in that section, and then putting, the roll plots show it a little better, but every 300, 400 feet, putting an inlet and then discharging that to the ditch, to a wider ditch on the City of Fitchburg side, the east side, that would be, we would look at designing that, hopefully, preferably at least a 2-foot flat bottom, maybe as much as a 4-foot flat bottom, to help provide both peak rate control as well as water quality treatment and infiltration because we need to meet performance standards, stormwater performance standards for the new impervious area that we're generating. So that's our approach in this section, is basically putting a robust, basically drainage way or treatment swale on that east side, and obviously, some of it will obviously from the crown south towards Tonto Trail. Obviously, that'll flow south, but and drainage will still occur, like it's currently happening there. We're still proposing from the crown, from the top of the hill south, that there'd be a swale on the town of Verona side, like it's currently draining, and then the exact location of the center line is got some flexibility to it, but that's something that will be, Chris and I will be wrestling it out. So that's, and then we are showing this potential future bike path, a 10-foot wide, likely an asphalt path, but a 10-foot wide asphalt path that probably won't get built with this construction, but more likely built as development, if and when development occurs on the east side. then Fitchburg would have the ability to incorporate that into development agreements with those potential developers, or there may be if the timing doesn't work out, the city, if there's a long-term project to run the trail down. I know that there's been some discussions about having a trail that goes all the way down to Whalen Road. Again, very much pie in the sky, long-term future. But they wanted us to at least look at where that potential path would be, just so we can make sure that we accommodate that. Most likely, it's going to be on outside the existing right-of-way on the east side of. So private properties on the east side of Fitchrona Road right-of-way. So that's basically that first section. And then we've got a section of Lacey Road, from Lacey Road up to Nesbitt Road, a kind of a general section. The idea is to have curb and gutter in that section. Again, in general, two 11-foot driving lanes going, obviously northbound and southbound. And then similar 2-foot wide bike buffers, and then the 4-foot wide bike lanes on both sides, then the curb and gutter. Now, obviously, as we get in the vicinity of Lacey Road intersection, there's gonna be turning lanes that we'll need to have happen in here. Right now, the plan is to only add turning lanes to Lacey Road, not to put turning lanes to any of the to Tonto Trail, Pheasant Lane, or Goose Lake Drive, or even Quarry Vista Drive, sorry. But look at turning lanes, just because that's where the big movement, and Derek will be able to fill us in a little bit more as the design progresses on the traffic counts that he had done, as well as the traffic forecasting that he's working with the Metropolitan Planning Organization for basically helping to identify what the long-term traffic forecasts are for this area. And again, there's a section already from Lacey Road to Quarry Vista Drive that there's an existing pervious asphalt pavement that's in place right now, and obviously that we're planning to keep that in as much as we can. There'll be some sections that we'll be connecting into the Lacey Road intersection that that'll be a portion of that'll be taken out and replaced, and then also where we're connecting and crossing Quarry Vista Drive, and then the idea is north of Quarry Vista Drive all the way to Nesbitt Road, we would have a continuous proposed 10-foot wide, likely asphalt path, and possibly a pervious asphalt, similar to the asphalt path that's in that section south of Quarry Vista Drive right now. The nice thing about the pervious asphalt from a stormwater perspective is that that actually helps to serve as a stormwater treatment device, and will generate less. It'll actually accept run-on into that, as long as it's performing well, and help meet the stormwater performance criteria. So then we wouldn't need to allocate as much real estate for stormwater, a stormwater swale, or a stormwater wet pond, or a dry pond, or a bioretention facility. So that's basically the rest of the section down. We do have a couple of other areas. So we've got a section that shows, so under the Military Ridge State Trail is going to be a very challenging area. We have this abutment that's kind of hanging up way up high. That's not, at least to what the plans that we were able to find from DNR, there's not a piling system underneath here. So we will be designing a pretty significant retaining wall, and we may actually, look at needing to do something specific to that existing, basically that existing abutment to make this work to get the path underneath the Military Ridge State Trail Bridge. And then similarly, we're also looking at doing between the piers that are for the 18151 Verona Road and the existing bridge abutment, we'll have, we're going to try to get that 10-foot wide asphalt path if we can. we have the ability to potentially shrink that down to 8 foot in that area if we have just space constraints that we can't deal with. But our hope is to at least have a continuous 10-foot wide path if we possibly can. And again, there'll be a significant retaining wall that would be included as part of that design. So as we get closer along, now we've got the existing survey, and Andrew and I will be working with our structural engineer, Matt Krippner, and his staff on designing that retaining wall. Matt's already had a chance to talk with Bureau of Structures staff at DOT, and again, no initial huge red flags. We think that this is something that DOT would allow, but again, still a long ways from having that obviously permitted and figured out. But as we design that, then we'll be working closely with Bureau of Structure staff and the region team to make sure that that's something that will be acceptable to DOT. At the Tonto Trail, Pheasant Lane, and Goose Lake Drive intersections, our plan is to basically follow Wisconsin DOT guidance for either a Type C or a Type D intersection. So not really a turning lane, but we'd have tapers basically going from the main traveled lane to the radius point. So the Type C basically just has basically is what is there right now, more or less. I guess kind of less, because there's really not a taper to speak of currently. But we'd be looking at designing that little bit of a taper, and then it could either be an asphalt radius on both sides, or the Type D shows the curb and gutter radius. So there's pros and cons to each of those options. Certainly, if you have preferences, we'll be talking further with Chris about that. Obviously, the curb and gutter would be a higher cost, but there are some potential benefits just for defining that the edge of pavement a little better, potentially having less rutting that might occur for any trucks or vehicles that are taking the corner short. Again, some pros and cons for both of that, cost versus the benefit that we'll be talking more about with Chris as the design progresses. Then the other thing that we're especially interested in any feedback that you have is how we address the Lacey Road intersection. So there's 4 different alternatives that were already reviewed back in 2020, and then there's a report that KL Engineering helped the city put together that I believe Ross is going to put on the webpage, the Fitchrona Road webpage as well. But there's 4 different alternatives. The alternative 1 is this area on the left. So that's just basically more or less the current configuration with a stop on Lacey Road and then no stop on Fitchrona Road, but basically improving it to actually add the left turn lane, and then there'd be potential medians that would go in. So again, with all of that additional additional pavement, it's obviously going to widen that area out, and so that there's going to be, all of them have impacts on and various portions. Pretty much all 4 of those alternatives have a similar impact on Diane's property here on the southeast corner, and also a pretty similar impact on the northeast corner. Alternatives, I guess I'll jump in at alternative 2. This is actually the initial preferred option that city staff, different city staff that were involved in putting the RFP together, that they had initially suggested basically this 3-way or all-way stop configuration. And so this is definitely something that we'll be evaluating. And I think actually we're evaluating alternative 1 as well. But evaluating both of these for the pros and cons of what works best. Both of these really have a similar, at least as they're currently laid out, have a pretty similar impact on the adjacent properties. And similarly, alternative 3 that I'll go into next has a pretty similar impact. Again, the red lines here basically show the likely additional right-of-way that would be needed to be acquired. And then that information is documented in that Lacey Road intersection report. And I'll go into the next one. Alternative 3 is the traffic signal at the intersection. That was the highest cost out of all of the 4 alternatives. And maybe I'll go back to the initial level of service. So that's this LOS. The initial level of service for the stop control was identified to be a C in certain conditions and a D in certain conditions. Derek, do you want to just talk a little bit about just level of service and what that means?
Yeah, level of service is a performance measure. It's the most general way to identify what operations are going to look like at an intersection or segment of road. So intersection level of service is primarily based on delay of a vehicle. So it's average delay per vehicle approaching each lane of the traffic of that intersection. Level of service A is your type of movement where you're seeing 1 or 2 vehicles sitting at a stop bar at a traffic signal. Their delay is very minimal, there's very little impact, there's very small queues. You then work your way from level of service A through B, C, D, E, and F. As you get to F, that is where you have your very significant delay. We typically are seeing delay over 60 or 90 seconds per average vehicle at that point. At the point of level of service A, you're seeing less than probably 5 seconds, and everything in between just incrementally gets worse. So these intersections operating at level of service C and D are all considered acceptable. Level of service E and F is where we start deeming everything unacceptable.
And do you have a sense, Derek, of what the current level of service is with the current traffic pattern?
Yeah, current level of service is level of service A's and B's throughout peak hour periods. Operations today are very good. There's not much of a concern. There are some minor safety issues outside of operations, but traffic volumes are low today. And what we're planning for in the future is this future development to the south on Fitchrona and to the east on Lacey Road. We're going to see an uptick in traffic volume, especially the turning movements coming to and from Fitchrona. For reference, today's traffic is about 6,000 vehicles per day on Fitchrona Road and about 3,000 to 3,500 vehicles per day on Lacey Road. We're still trying to figure out what those future projections are going to look like, but they are going to be significantly more.
And then maybe do you want to talk a little bit about the benefits of having the left turn, the turning lanes and also the medians?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting with the turn lanes, the southbound left turn lane from Fitchrona Road to eastbound Lacey Road is probably the most important. We have seen a couple crashes in the last 5 years associated to this, and it can also just introduce delay to southbound through traffic as it is today, because that left turning traffic will sit in that through lane, blocking through traffic, being an operational delay, but really more of a safety issue more than anything. Additionally, we have the turn lanes on Lacey Road. That is dependent on the type of traffic control that is recommended. But nonetheless, we are going to see a bigger split in turning traffic from Lacey Road now as development occurs, and as development is slower to occur south on Fitchrona Road. You're going to see a lot more vehicles going northbound on Fitchrona and eastbound on Lacey Road to kind of differentiate that turning movement more so. So to provide 2 turn lanes will improve operations significantly there. The other thing being medians. Medians are great when you do introduce turn lanes because it provides that defined location of where your turn lane is, and then also prevents oncoming traffic, whether that's turning or through oncoming traffic, from entering your turn lane. Sometimes it's difficult, especially in Wisconsin when we have snow-covered roads, to really know where that defined turn lane is. A median can help that significantly. Additionally, geometrics, medians can really improve truck turning traffic. So we do have to take into consideration the radii of this intersection, and the medians can significantly make it easier for this truck traffic to maneuver the intersection.
Great, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So then the alternative 3 and 4, alternative 3 basically shows that traffic signal that I mentioned, and that does, in the long term. Is this at the 40-year design life, or is it? Do you remember the
Level service B?
Yeah.
That is for the design
Okay.
So I don't remember what this study designed for, but it was probably 2040 to 2045 timeframe. So that future level of service is acceptable at that level of service A and B that's shown for the roundabout and signal.
And then the fourth alternative that was identified in that report is basically a roundabout. And so that actually was showing as a level of service A. Still, it has, less impacts actually farther to the north than the other alternatives. So this area likely not as impacted, but certainly more impacts in this area right close to the intersection on the west side, on the town of Fitchrona side, and then similar impacts as what the current all of the alternatives have for this quadrant and this the southeast and the northeast quadrant. Derek, do you want? And this is the one that in more recent discussions with city staff, this is certainly one of our recommended areas. And so, right now we're anticipating, studying alternatives 1, 2, and 4. Traffic signal was both, from cost and not necessarily a big improvement, compared to the roundabout anyway, for level of service. Anything else you want to kind of highlight related to the roundabout?
Yeah, a couple of things with the roundabout. With the level of service being A, it's kind of evident, but this configuration provides the biggest room for growth. When we do see development start occurring more south on Fitchrona Road, this roundabout will be able to accommodate that traffic. There is the room for additional capacity without those extra turn lanes. We are only seeing one lane roundabout here that can operate very well. This alternative actually has less pavement at the intersection than all three other alternatives.
And then also the continuity with the other roundabouts do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have continuity to the north and east now with Seminole Highway to the east and Nesbitt Road to the north having roundabouts. Driver familiarity is huge, this being a safety benefit to the area. Drivers running through roundabouts one after another, they expect it. They know what to see. They know how to maneuver them once they've gone through them once. Additionally, roundabouts can also help other safety issues as well. We do have a little bit of a crash history at this intersection, about 5 crashes in the last 5 years. We're seeing about 1 crash per year. Some of these crashes have been pretty high severity with injuries included. These being more of your angle type crashes or left turn crashes. And part of the reason of this is sight distance issues when vehicles are looking to the south. A couple crashes were noted that a vehicle is not able to be seen. A roundabout will significantly improve that safety-related issue. You're almost eliminating angle crashes and left turn crashes. Roundabouts do at times see a slight uptick in crashes, but they're much more of the low-end property damage only, little fender benders and side swipes. So you're really protecting the individuals behind the wheel now instead, and also you're creating this traffic calming effect as well, going through the corridor. This is a more rural section. When you get south of Nesbitt, you probably notice some traffic does travel at high speeds in this segment. This roundabout will slow traffic. It'll get it down to a more reasonable speed through this area. And you don't have quite as much space between the Nesbitt roundabout now and the Lacey Road roundabout. Traffic probably won't get up to that speed as high as they used to previously.
Great, thank you. So then I'll try to do a little bit of an overview of each of the different 4 roll plots that you can look at closer here tonight, and then also potentially available online. You can obviously see them on the PowerPoint presentation on the web page, and if we can, we'll try to get the roll plots resized for viewing on the web page. But you can kind of see, and I'll try to see if my mouse can activate. So basically, again, somewhat similar as the current alignment, but just wider asphalt because we're adding the bike lanes and the 2-foot bike buffers between the traveled way and the bike lanes. In this stretch, we're primarily just showing the existing proposed gravel shoulder up to the top of the hill, which is about by this driveway to at the top of the hill, and then obviously there'll be an existing ditch on the on the west side that drains to the existing culvert underneath Tonto Trail. And then, that basically this will have the same drainage considerations that the existing situation has. And then from the top of the hill on the east side, similarly, we're proposing that wider swale for stormwater treatment that would, obviously could if and when the asphalt path would get built, it would help to address some of the stormwater performance standards for that asphalt path. Again, it could be a pervious asphalt path, and then there wouldn't be quite as much of a need to have that wider swale. But again, it is pretty steep. Obviously on both sides of the hill. You can see just by these are 1 foot contours. So every contour here is 1 foot in elevation difference. So when they get to be really compressed like that, it's a good indication that you've got a really steep area. When there's a big spacing, like here, it gets to be there's still slope on it, but a much flatter slope. And then working from the top of the hill going north, in this area, because there is such there's not a very deep swale currently. One of the design considerations that the city has started with that we're still emulating in this plan set is basically putting a curb and gutter on the west side, or proposing a curb and gutter on the west side. Again, that's still, if there's concerns over that, we could also, we still certainly could go with a ditch, but we'd probably need to make a wider, deeper ditch than what's currently there in order to, not see the problems that we're currently, that are currently being experienced on that side. If we go with this this curb and gutter, then we'd need to discharge that. We'd have curb and gutter inlets staggered at different spots, and then we need to figure out a pipe. Right now we're proposing basically running a pipe perpendicular under Fitchrona Road and then discharging that on a wider swale that would be on the east side. Again, that would likely, we'd likely need to acquire right-of-way on that east side potentially for the swale, certainly long-term for the bike path. There would need to be additional right-of-way there. There may or may not need to be, right now we're not anticipating additional right-of-way on the west side until we get closer to Lacey Road intersection. But there would potentially be some tree impacts for any trees that are in the existing right-of-way. And I had a chance to talk with the Schultzes, and we'll take a look specifically at the large oak that they had mentioned. And if there's any other trees or things that are there, you let Chris Barnes or myself or Ross know. All of us are listed in the contacts at the beginning slide as well as at the end slide. And then again, there are also comment sheets that you can either fill out tonight, or you can take them back with you and then fill out and then get to Ross. Just Ross's email is at the bottom of that comment sheet. And again, we'd like to get those comments by June 9th, just so we can get that to our project team and start working on making sure that we address those comments if we can. The next one is obviously starting to get a little bit busier. So we're showing Fitchrona Road north, obviously north of that high point. Again, still proposing curb and gutter. We've got a little bit of a gap here that we may there's potential to extend the curb and gutter all the way through here. Again, we're showing the alternative, I guess kind of the alternative 1/2 alignment in this, more or less, in this exhibit, just because that was what the initial city preference was, this all-way stop control configuration. So because we're hoping to be able to utilize this existing swale on the east side of Fitchrona Road for stormwater treatment, then that pushes basically with the turn lanes and the medians, and obviously a through lane here that pushes the proposed curb and gutter onto these adjacent properties. So obviously there'd be right-of-way acquisition that would need to be negotiated for all of these property owners. in this current configuration, and really any of the intersection configurations that we'd be likely looking at. There'd be at least some impacts on all quadrants of the intersection. We are showing, so again, the tapers into the Pheasant Lane and Goose Lake Drive, as well as Tonto Trail, and then radius points around. Right now, we're just showing the gravel edge around those intersections. There could be some I guess Goose Lake, we are showing curb and gutter here. Obviously, if we go with curb and gutter in this section too, this could be a curb and gutter intersection. Again, this is very, very preliminary. Andrew basically finished this up in the last couple of nights. So again, this is kind of hot off the press, and I would say a fair amount of flexibility. There's going to be big impacts here regardless, but we've got some flexibility in exactly what those impacts are and where those impacts happen. The other things that we're showing, the city wanted to be able to extend the existing water main that currently is underneath the asphalt path around the Alana apartments. So we'll connect in right by the hydrant at this northeast corner and extend that underneath Lacey Road, and then extend that farther to the south. Get that through the project, the impacted project limits, and then that can be then connected on in the future, going south and or into any future developments that may occur in this area. Right now, we're not anticipating any significant changes to the sanitary sewer system, other than where there are manholes. The city will be looking at the condition of those manhole structures. We'll need to adjust the manhole castings up to whatever the final grade is. That may include going down to the cone section, potentially raising that or lowering it. But again, we're not at this point, we're not looking at any significant sanitary sewer replacements. Or Ross, you maybe have an update on that?
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out, as part of a separate project, we will be doing lining repairs on some of the sanitary sewer on Fitchrona Road, but those lining repairs don't require digging up the sanitary sewer or anything like that. It's kind of basically a tube you place inside the existing sewer that kind of shores up any cracks or holes that are in the existing sewer. And there are definitely some leaks in the sewer in this area because it's made of clay and from
high groundwater issues in this area. So getting that sanitary main lined, as well as potentially working with any property owners on laterals that might be in the groundwater in that groundwater area is probably something that Chris and Ross and utility staff, Fitchburg utility staff, will likely be looking into.
And that's the reason we're not really talking about it here, is because it's part of a separate project than this road reconstruction. So,
great. I think that's pretty much. And again, we're showing a little bit of the Lacey Road portion. The rest of it is kind of off at this angle. So you can see this is where Fitchrona Road is. So you got to turn your head the other way. Actually, this way, north is up. So it's a little bit easier for us maybe, but. Showing connecting about to that area. This is the proposed curb and gutter that'll be installed as part of the Lacey Road project now. That's roughly 450 feet east of Fitchrona Road. Right now they'll be tying in and matching in with the current project about here, but this will just be asphalt that'll be taken, just to match what's there currently. And again, that'll be taken out, when the Fitchrona Road project is built. Right now, construction, I've got a different slide for the project schedule. We're basically designing we're going to try to get most of the design done here in 2023, and then a little bit into 2024, work on any right-of-way acquisition, permitting through 2024. And right now, the city and town are hoping to construct this stretch of project in 2025, if everything goes well. But that's kind of a general, and I've got some more specifics on a follow-up slide. I think that's, I guess the other thing that, we have drainage right now. So just pretend we don't have this Lacey Road inset map here. But if we look at basically the area south of Lacey Road and east of Fitchrona Road. In this general area, there'll be a sizable stormwater facility that'll be being constructed this summer, I believe, as part of the Lacey Road project. So obviously the Lacey Road project has new impervious area that's being widened to the existing Lacey Road. So that stormwater facility that'll be placed down on this property, the Fitchburg Minerals LLC property, will be helping to meet the stormwater requirements for the Lacey Road project. And then right now, what we're proposing, Ben and I had a meeting, and Ross, with DNR and Dane County staff about talking about the stormwater performance standards that we need to meet, so we make sure that we incorporate those features into the design up front, just so that we can actually get the project permitted. So for this area, since there's quite a large area of off-site drainage that's coming into the project boundary, we're proposing to actually keep that as a separate pipe. So that water, rather than going into the storm system that we designed for this project, right now we're proposing to keep that as a separate pipe. Right now we show it, obviously outside the curb and gutter. That's a pretty huge impact. It's all on, right now it's showing predominantly on private property. I think we've got space to be able to keep that pipe under the road limits. So there's still going to be some right-of-way acquisition needed, but not necessarily, may not be needed for that stormwater bypass pipe that we'd be putting in. Again, so obviously, it's a very preliminary, like 20-25% plans that we're showing here. That's likely something that we'll be modifying very shortly, is pulling that pipe back in and underneath the roadway limits. But again, the idea is to basically, pass that water through the project site without really changing the flow characteristics of it from what the existing scenario is, and then basically discharging it into the ditch that it's already discharging on the next sheet that I'll show you next. But then, again, like I said, in this area, there's an existing swale, obviously, that water is currently flowing through on the east side of Fitchrona Road, and basically between the existing Fitchrona Road and the asphalt bike path. We're looking at right now. What I'm proposing is that we convert that basically to a bioretention facility. So it'd be somewhat of a linear bioretention facility with engineered soil in it. It's going to be somewhat narrow, but probably at least a 4-foot flat bottom. So again, it provides peak rate control. It provides water quality treatment with the engineered soil in it, and it also provides the potential for infiltration. So that's in this section from Lacey Road to Quarry Vista Drive. Because we're so constrained on downstream, as I'll talk about in the next slide, with groundwater elevation, and again, this is where most of the new the widened impervious area is going to be. So this is what I want to do is try to get that stormwater facility as close to our increased impervious area as possible. So that's what our current plan is. Again, would like to get any feedback that anybody has on that approach. If you've got other suggestions, this is a great time to voice those and get those to us, and then Kyle and I will be responsible for kind of working our magic on exactly how we make that happen. I think that's all that I needed to talk about on this slide. Again, this is where we probably try to keep as much of this existing pervious asphalt in place as much as possible. I did have a chance to take a closer look at this. I was around for the construction of this in 2015. DRS actually put this in, and in general, it seems like it's performing fairly well. I haven't done any actual infiltration testing on it, but it seems like it's performing pretty well. There's another stretch on Lacey Road that I had a chance to look at that was put in 2017, and that's performing even better in my opinion from the surface. But both of these are looking pretty good. And again, that's one potential stormwater treatment recommendation that we may be making. Again, there's trade-offs for pervious asphalt pavement. Generally, the design life isn't as long as a standard asphalt pavement. But, you know, the nice thing is that you get some stormwater performance standards that can be met for that. Then as we're going farther, did I jump one too far or no? Yeah, I did. Yeah, obviously you can see the impacts that we have from where we're starting that median in this area. Again, this is between Lacey Road to the south and Quarry Vista Drive here. We are showing basically, potential asphalt path that's right about at the existing right-of-way line right now. Again, so that is, just to try to minimize, we've got homes that are obviously very close on the east side. We've got some homes that are close on the west side, you can see as well. And again, if the roundabout goes in place, that won't have nearly as much impact on this particular property, but there's going to be impact here. I guess I'll also say that if you remember, the current drainage happens in this existing swale on the east side of Fitchrona Road and then crosses in this 48-inch diameter corrugated metal pipe at about a 45-degree angle, goes underneath this driveway at Laura Daly's property, and then discharges into the existing swale that's all on these private properties currently. And I don't know, we'll talk more about, right now what we're anticipating is just to, keep the existing, the flow that's going through, not adding to that, but just, basically reconnecting the flow that's already going to this area, not making it any worse as part of this project. And we can talk with Chris about whether there's any easements or right-of-way that are either existing or needed as part of the project. But again, that's our approach for just bypassing the water that's coming from off-site through the project limits, and then utilizing this existing swale for treatment. Currently, there's as part of the Quarry Vista Drive, or Quarry Vista neighborhood, there's obviously some different large infiltration facilities that are put, you can see them farther upstream to the east on Quarry Vista Drive. There's also terrace rain gardens that are placed strategically through the subdivision in that terrace between the curb and gutter and the sidewalk that help to meet those stormwater performance standards. And then the homeowners association is generally responsible for maintaining those with some success, I think. This particular one was put in as part of that. There's actually a back flap valve here. We're actually looking at maybe potentially taking this out, and if we're able to make this all as one large bioretention facility, that will eliminate the need to have this backflow, basically backflow preventer that's here currently. Again, basically discharging, stormwater from the new impervious area into this swale, providing that treatment from a peak rate control, water quality and infiltration volume in here before it goes out back into the storm main. In this area, we're proposing the main trunk line down the center of the right-of-way because we have the water main crosses at an angle here, but through the section north of Quarry Vista Drive, the water mains on the west side, the town of Verona side, that was put in 2015, and then the sanitary sewer is basically down the existing edge of pavement on the east side. That'll be staying in place and being lined like Ross had described. And again, those manholes will just be adjusting to the final grade, and then that's really the impact to the sanitary sewer. And the water main, we're anticipating being able to design around the water main. So obviously we don't want to have a storm sewer that's impacting that water main. So right now, our proposal is to have the main trunk line in this area go down that center line and then be discharging into a culvert. There's the existing culvert right here that's really weirdly configured. It actually goes up. The eastern side is lower than the western side, so it goes up about a foot vertically in about 8 feet, goes flat, and then it goes down about a half a foot on the west side. So water is basically conveyed through that by surcharging. Once it gets up high enough in this little ditch that you can, or this little kind of ponding area, it'll basically surcharge into that to get out. So this is one of the current main, other than the large 48-inch pipe here, this is the primary way that water from the Quarry Ridge Recreation Area pond discharges. It goes underneath the culvert, kind of at an angle underneath the asphalt bike path here, and then it currently goes out this way. Right now, we're proposing to basically reconfigure this so there'll be a trunk line that's connected here to this pipe, and then this pipe will just be to accept any water that's on the backside of the asphalt path, and then get that into the storm sewer and run it through here. As part of the 2019 study that AECOM had done for the city, we had looked at recommending two 38-inch tall by 60-inch wide pipes here to improve conveyance as well. So we've got these pipes, and then we also are proposing improved conveyance on underneath the 18151 overpass to go to this discharge location. So right now we're showing 4 decent-sized large pipes discharging in this area that there's only one. So that's one thing that obviously is important to make sure that people are aware. This is if we're going to improve. This is really something that is needed if we're going to reduce the flooding on Fitchrona Road. And this needs to be done in conjunction with the work that Ben and Chris are doing with figuring out a way to lower the tailwater that's occurring in this area because of the basically the head constraints that Goose Lake is providing currently. And I've got a slide later on that we'll be able to kind of flesh out some of the I guess nuances / issues associated with that. But that's basically what I'm showing on this that I can think of. Again, just the 2 driving lanes, the bike buffer lanes, the bike buffers, and the bike lanes within the pavement, and then curb and gutter on both sides to replace the current. In this area, this area is primarily a rural section. As we get closer to the 18151, then there's a curb and gutter on the west side, and then even right underneath Verona Road, there's curb and gutter on the east side as well. And I'll go to that slide next. Again, this is basically showing, so this overlaps with the last one, and you can kind of see the proposed storm sewer here. Again, we've got, this is the Quarry Ridge Recreation Area. You can see the standing water that's in this area. Until 2010, the Quarry Ridge Recreation Area parking lot was basically down here. And I actually had the privilege of working for the city of Fitchburg during the time that parking lot went underwater, and it stayed underwater after the 2008 floods. Paul, the director of public works at the time, was like, "Well, let's wait it out. It'll just drop, right?" It never did. It just didn't. And so finally, the city decided, well, we're going to need to relocate the parking lot. So you can see that the parking lot is in this configuration, and other than really big events, the parking lot is generally, it's higher than portions of Fitchrona Road are, so sometimes it's a little bit of an island. But obviously, and I've got some slides that kind of talk about the constraints and concerns over flooding in this area. But our stormwater approach in this area basically is to, generally, we've got, about 1,000 acres that's draining across this area. 600 of that is coming from basically this all to this area. And we've got current piping. There's a pipe underneath 18151 that flows to the north. And then there's a pipe, pretty steep, like a 1.5% grade to the north. There's a pipe on the west side that flows to the south at like a 0.3% grade. It's a 30-inch pipe. And then we've got 2 18-inch pipes that one's flat and the other flows basically back-pitched. In order for water to get out of this area when it wants to, it's having a surcharge up this 30-inch pipe as well as surcharge up this 18-inch pipe in order to get out this 30-inch pipe. So what we're proposing is basically in our study that we did in 2019, we really didn't think that it was going to work to get a new pipe underneath to basically reorient this pipe under 18151 just because of the overpass being there. And it's still going to be a really big challenge, but with the necessity or the desire to get this asphalt path through there, then that presented the opportunity we're going to be underneath there working. We need to get a permit from DOT. We potentially can actually right-size this pipe and get it oriented to drain the way that water wants to drain through this area. So that's what we're looking at trying to design. Obviously, there's pros and cons to this approach. The pro, if we can get water to the downstream, the west side of Fitchrona Road, address some of those tailwater effects and improve the conveyance, we can reduce the flooding significantly in this area. Again, there's some pros and cons. Again, we did just start the wetland delineations. I suspect a lot of this area is going to be flagged as wetland. So you might see some wetland flags out there in this next couple of weeks, and obviously that'll be where we're identifying that wetland boundary. So there's obviously permitting constraints associated with the wetlands. We have had some good discussions with DNR and Dane County about utilizing, actually maybe I'll go back to the previous slide. One potential item that we've talked about is potentially to incorporate a wetland scrape in this area to reduce to lower the level. Right now this is predominantly reed canary grass. We're actually proposing to do a floristic quality index to get a good understanding of what the current wetland quality is in this area. One of the potential ideas that we have, and again, obviously by no means is it got a thumbs up, but at least we didn't, DNR didn't kick us out of the room when we brought this up, and Dane County didn't either. We'd have to get both Dane County and DNR to buy into this because this is Dane County property. But again, one way, obviously, and again, there's potential negative impacts of improving conveyance to reduce the flooding. Is that water is going somewhere, and it would be the way this is designed. It would go to right here, and obviously go into the Goose Lake system if it's here. So. There's some other things, and Ben mentioned the potential for, one option may be to, as MMSD, no longer is needing or using that effluent return line, there could be a way to design a system that pumps into that effluent return line, discharges into that. Alternatively, there could be a way to improve, either increase infiltration, through the Goose Lake system, and or put a pipe in to allow, maybe not stormwater, uncontrolled stormwater, but maybe groundwater to help lower the groundwater table in this area. So those are some of the different things that we're at least starting to look at. And a couple other things on this slide, and I'll try to wrap up here at least on the plans. Again, we mentioned the discharge location. This is the MMSD's pumping station 12. So this is some of those improvements that Chris had talked about are basically, in the backside, farther, basically on the west side of Goose Lake. But that obviously those pipes connect into the gravity. There are a 48-inch or a 54-inch gravity pipe that drains to the lift station, and there's a 36-inch force main that comes out of that pumping station and then pumps it basically through Fitchburg to the east over to pumping station 11 that's on the far northeast corner of Fitchburg, and then that ultimately pumps it, lifts it there and pumps it over to the Nine Springs treatment plant. That effluent return line that was talked about basically comes right alongside that 36-inch force main between the Military Ridge State Trail and Verona Road. And again, we're showing that proposed 10-foot wide asphalt path, a pretty substantial retaining wall underneath the Military Ridge State Trail, also a pretty substantial retaining wall underneath Verona Road, and then a retaining wall basically going the other way, supporting the road from falling into this low wet area behind the Bavaria Sausage property. Because when we were walking through this area a few weeks ago, we noticed a biker coming off of the Military Ridge State Trail. Right now, this asphalt path just dead ends at the existing curb and gutter of Fitchrona Road, and I realized the biker that was coming through here ended up going, crossing, the pavement and then going northbound on road. Obviously there's no real designated, there's no, I guess there may be bike lanes there currently, but there's no bike buffer, and obviously there's no warning for crossing traffic, and he obviously survived, but there wasn't any ongoing traffic when that happened. But it made me think about, when we put this in, do we want to connect up, so we do show a potential future trail connection to the east side to the Military Ridge State Trail. We'd work with DNR then on signage that we maybe would just encourage bikers coming on and off of this to be, so for example, if you're going northbound on the road, and you want to get onto the Military Ridge path, you'd take this way up. If you want to go, if you're going southbound and you want to go up, rather than crossing traffic here, there may be a safer option to either be on the path or go northbound, and then we can potentially make a connection from the bike lane to the bike trail, and then also come up here. So again, this is just something that we've talked about, thrown out the idea. Interested in getting any feedback that you have. Ross will also, I think, follow up with Bike Fitchburg and see if they have any concerns or thoughts about that. Again, this is something that we threw together, just because we thought it would be important to talk about, get feedback from you on that. And then, basically the bike path is showing connecting up to the bike path, basically the 10-foot wide concrete that we had put in as part of the Nesbitt Road roundabout project back in 2018 era. And I think that, that really, I think that covers everything that I had on the plans. Then on the schedule, so obviously we started basically, just 2 months ago in March on working on construction. We've got pretty much all the survey done. Andrew's going to check to see, there's a little bit of a gap on the Lacey Road, because we didn't know about that the Lacey Road project was going to end 400 feet back. So, but Ross was able to send us the topo that came from the Lacey Road project. So I think we're probably good on there. We're really pretty good everywhere, other than maybe we don't have that trail connection up to the Military Ridge State Trail. Again, if it's a future path, we can just identify that as a concept. We may not need to get a topo survey for that, for at least doing the concept plan. But we've got that pretty well done. Obviously, we've got, the task 2 is the more related to the transportation project plat, and then identifying where those right-of-way impacts. That would be more towards after we're done at least 50% plans. Then we'll start working on that later this fall, basically fall and winter. And then wetland delineation, we've just started, again, we started desktop analysis a couple weeks ago, and then field work started this week, and we should have that field work wrapped up by July. We probably won't do the permit applications will start after we get farther along on our stormwater management design or modeling. And then we've obviously started working on plans and stormwater design, that water main design, and then Derek's going to be helping us with the intersection geometry evaluation and traffic management plan, and as well as construction staging. And then as we get this fine-tuned, then we'll work with Matt Krippner on our retaining wall design, and obviously we've We've already had a really good meeting, I felt, with DNR and Dane County on just making sure that they're aware of our approach, got the feedback that they're able to provide for that. And then we also have the meetings that are shown here. So the stars, the upper stars are basically the public involvement meeting. So that's where we're at today for the first one. And then our plan is basically in the November or December timeframe to have that second public involvement meeting. By then, we'll hopefully be very close to a final design and be able to talk through what we came up with based on your comments and any other comments that Ross receives. Again, hopefully our hopeful deadline for those comments is June 9th. So we're giving a couple weeks for people to be able to see what we've got so far, and then let us know of any concerns, issues, And again, if you have positive feedback to give it to us, we love to hear positive feedback too. But any feedback, negative or positive, is important. And then we've got obviously several different meetings that we'll continue having with Ben and Chris and Ross throughout the rest of the project. So obviously, project challenges. We all know that Fitchrona Road has been flooding a lot, and more in recent decades and years. Some of the other, obviously, the constraints are with getting that asphalt path. We can see in this photo, you can see the Military Ridge State Trail bridge. So those retaining walls are going to be very, very challenging. Working with DOT to get those permitted, constructed, get the storm sewer system designed and permitted and built is going to be a challenge. So obviously a lot of challenges related to that. I think we've got a much better approach than what I even had envisioned so far. Again, it may not be a perfect approach, but I think based on what the challenges that we have, at least I'm pretty comfortable saying that it'll be a big improvement over what's there currently. It'll have some potential negative impacts that we want to be aware of and talk through. These are a couple of slides related to the work that Ben and Chris had talked about related to the Fitchrona Road flood study. This is actually a slide from A2S's plan. It documented it provided some of the years that I had documented while I was here of when I knew that Fitchrona Road, obviously it floods on a more regular basis, and the city doesn't always get cones and barricades out every time water's on the pavement, but when it's lasting for prolonged periods of time is basically when they've been putting the barricades out, and again, there's a lot of people that will drive right through that, and one that was actually I won't say who, but anyway, when he was young, he grew up in this area, and he floated his vehicle, and actually he pushed his vehicle off to the side in order to get keep it from washing down. But it was some kind of interesting stories. But again, we are looking at providing increased pipe capacity for this area and improved conveyance. And this gets kind of Chris had suggested that I add in the recommendations from the A2S slide. So basically looking at, this basically shows some of the roadblocks effectively, and this is roadblocks and stormwater drainage. You can see this is Fitchrona Road basically up here on this end, and then goes to Goose Lake here. I don't know, Chris, if you want to drive. There's the mouse is right here if you want to come up around.
I'll just say, I really appreciate your patience tonight.
Yeah.
I do appreciate your patience. Ben and I are here if you want to, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. If you have specific questions, maybe afterwards, you can contact us and we can talk about it. But I think in the interest of time, we'll try to move ahead.
Yep. And that's the last slide. So again, any general questions that people have before we go back into the open house format?
Rick, we have a question from online.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jason Slayball wants to know if there's a plan for the power lines that go along the path on the east side of the road.
Yeah, so we haven't started discussions with the power companies yet about that, but that'll be one of the next things. We know that there's going to be impacts to those. And so certainly, that'll be probably within the next month, we'll be starting the conversations with the utility companies about what it'll mean to remove or relocate those. Certainly anything that's in the existing right-of-way, then the city of Fitchburg and town of Verona can basically compel those utilities to move at their costs. If it's on easement, then the project would need to help reimburse those. But as long as we've got still plenty of time before construction would start to work through those issues and opportunities too. Any other general questions? Go ahead.
So we can share with everybody at home.
You made the statement that the sanitary sewer line that runs underneath Fitchrona Road was not going to be replaced or anything, maybe just a liner put in it?
Put in a liner, and I think, Ross, do you want to describe, is it a cured-in-place liner?
Yeah, so like Rick is saying, we call it a cured-in-place liner, which it basically goes in as a soft, I guess you could call it kind of a sock.
It's kind of like a sock
structure. Yeah, they turn it inside out as they push it through the pipe, and then you heat it up usually with steam, and that hardens the resin in that pipe, and it's as hard or harder than a PVC plastic sewer main, which is basically what we use now for all of our sewer main is PVC plastic. So it basically is the same size as the existing sewer, and it basically blocks all of the cracks, and you get a brand new pipe on the inside of your current pipe.
Yeah, so it's basically that pipe within a pipe. There is some thickness, so it's actually you're reducing the inside pipe diameter somewhat, but usually, because the Manning's coefficient or the friction coefficient of that polyethylene liner is less. The hydraulics basically can be sometimes slightly improved over the current clay pipe that's there currently.
Okay, two thoughts on this. First off, that pipe was put in, I moved into the area in the mid-'70s. It was put in way before that. Mm-hmm. You're going to talk about increasing the capacity of what's going to be put into that pipe by the whole new subdivision that you're talking about on the Panandolan property or behind the settlement basin there. Aren't you concerned a little bit about having more effluent going in there than the pipe has capacity? You got a perfect opportunity to replace that pipe with a bigger one, bigger diameter. You're already putting a lot of money into a liner. And the second part of my question is, when you put that liner in, how do you connect all the laterals? My sanitary sewer lateral goes into that. You do what you're saying, you're going to close it off. I'm not going to have it.
Right.
Yeah,
and
so how, do you want me to explain it, or you can go ahead if you want.
So as far as the development part of that question goes, I'll touch base with our utility staff. Tracy Foss has been with the city for 25 years. So I'll touch base with her. I don't have exact details on the capacity and where sanitary effluent from those new developments would actually go.
I used to know the diameter of that pipe, and it runs in my mind. I can't say for sure, but I think it's only a 9-inch diameter pipe, inside
I would
diameter.
guess it's
I'm pretty sure it's an 8-inch.
Yeah.
Again, Chris might know more, but I think it's 8-inch, along Fitchrona Road in that area. It might be 10-inch, closer to the pumping station 12.
Mm-hmm. That's been that.
To answer your question about the laterals, they have a cutting tool that goes in with a camera. It goes in and cuts out where your lateral is located, because it's all televised.
It's an expensive Dremel tool. So basically, Dremels, and then they can visually see as they're cutting that. They call it a coupon, that they basically cut that connection. There's actually a bulge. When they pressurize that, as they heat it, it bulges out, so you can actually see the dimple as they put that in, and then they basically take that kind of fancy, expensive Dremel tool to cut that lateral out.
We've done quite a bit of the town system that way without really any issues.
I just think the capacity, when that line was designed back in the early 70s or before that, whenever it was put in, I'm quite certain the designer did not take into account that there's all this development going to take place around the area. I just can't believe that it's going to have enough capacity.
I think the thing I would say to that is an 8-inch sewer pipe is the minimum pipe size that we ever put in, and that can convey a lot more sanitary sewer effluent than you would guess. How many million gallons?
500,000 gallons.
500,000 gallons a day, as Chris said. So,
but I think it's definitely a good concern, and then certainly it's sometimes it's more expensive to line than put a new sanitary pipe in. So I think it's definitely something that Ross will follow up and look into that further. But because that's a good suggestion. Any other general questions? Otherwise, we can break back into the open house format and go over any specific questions. Again, go ahead.
I do have one more thought.
Yeah.
You said that you were going to develop that settling basin for the Lacey Road project this summer.
Yeah, the city. Well,
And thanks, Ross. I'll just say that this Lacey Road, Lacey Seminole intersection project has multiple stormwater facilities associated with it. So the portion that is treated by this basin that'll be near the intersection of Lacey and Fitchrona is really only treating pretty much the water that already drains to that area. So there's other stormwater facilities that are a part of this project north of Lacey Road on what was Promega property. And then also there's a larger facility that was part of the Crescent Crossing development just to the northeast of the Seminole-Lacey intersection. So it's just, I guess I want to just make it clear that it is just a portion of the Lacey Road reconstruction, that project that's draining to this new basin.
I understand that, but you said you're going to develop the settling basin this summer. You're not going to put the pipe that carries the overflow out of that basin until 2025? What's the water in
right,
the
again,
basin?
the work is really separate. So, it'll discharge the way the current system currently discharges, and that construction is anticipated to happen for the pond on the Fitchburg Minerals property. That's anticipated to happen this summer.
Correct.
But it'll just discharge through the current discharge that it's already going.
Yeah, so the discharge basically remains the same from the point of the pond on. It discharges into the eastern swale of Fitchrona Road.
If it can do that for 2 years, why can't it continue to do that and skip that pipe that you're going to run through my property?
Well, I mean, that's certainly something we can talk about. It's just that bypass pipe, and again, the bypass pipe is shown incorrectly. Where it's shown much more expansive than what I think really makes sense. So we should be able to pull that bypass pipe if we continue that to have that solution, pull it into the roadway limits, and still have plenty of room around the other existing utilities. Any other general questions that anybody has? Again, like Chris said, we really appreciate your patience with us tonight. This was certainly a lot longer than I expected, but we also came up with a lot of what I felt good information just in the last week that we were able to. That I want to make sure that we were able to get that information across to you to let you know what we've thought about so far, get feedback on what we haven't thought about so far, and then help to come up with a solution that we'll hopefully be proud of when we meet up with you again in a few months. Yeah, so I think then we can just go into the open house format, and we'll hang around as long as you need to go over any specific questions that you've got. Again, Ross's contact, Chris's contact, and my contact information is both on the slide here and available on the Fitchrona Road webpage. So again, thank you for your time.